As a fifth generation psychic medium, I've spoken with a lot of people around the world about grief and hardship. I've realized that I've wanted to take these difficulties and turn them into light, to share hope. And that by sharing these stories, we can all remember what's possible when we choose faith over fear. That even through our own dark nights of the soul, we can emerge victorious. That we can be pioneers of our story, releasing the shackles of our past. We can choose to remember why we are here. Our human existence is anchored in this life by our own growth, love for ourselves, and care for those around us. Like Rumi, the insightful poet, once said, "Live life as if everything is rigged in your favor." Through these incredible stories shared through my podcast, we are reminded of our faith in the universe and that we can persevere through anything. That the circumstances we have been handed are not wasted on us, but instead used to fuel our future. We all have pivotal moments in our lives that will certainly reshape who we are. They allow us to question what matters and what we are going to do next. I am honored to share these tragedy to triumph stories with you. Thank you for listening. This is the highway to healing. Lorna experienced over a decade of chronic health issues, and through that she learned the importance of self-love as well as changed her perspective on God. Join me for Lorna's story. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode, Lorna. I am intrigued by your story, your journey. You have shared that you had 16 years of chronic illness and that you were able to really break free of that. I would love to hear more about that. You mentioned, yoga, meditation, journaling, connecting with animals, singing, music. Walk the listeners through what you've been through.
Yeah, so that is true. It's been a long time. It's been a bit of a journey. So what where it all really started was really like from age 13 for me. And a lot of things kind of started to culminate during high school. So the big thing now that I reference a lot is chronic fatigue syndrome. And so that was really affecting my life for a long time. And um, it really, all those tools that you mentioned, the journaling and all of that stuff, I wasn't really cognizant of those as healing methods for a long time until a couple of years ago. So, yeah, so for a long time, I felt very limited in my life. And not only was I dealing with the chronic physical symptoms, but I also had self loathing and a very intense inner critic on my plate as well. So these are all things that I care a lot about helping people with this now because I just, I was dealing with it day in and day out for so long. And so, um, yeah, so as you can imagine, I really had this limited view of myself and my life and what I was allowed to experience within my life. And yeah, and then so coming up to 2018, I started to realize that some things needed to change within my life. My body was really telling me like this. I was doing kind of like labor intensive work. Um, and so my body was really telling me like, no, we're not doing this anymore. This isn't going to work. And so that really had me looking at my life and going, okay, well, where can I start taking better care of myself? And I really started to come home to myself in a whole new way where um when the reason it went on for so long is because I really thought well, like, this is the status quo for me, like, my body's sick and, like, that is not going to change, and I'd never heard from anyone that I had any other option. So, I really when all this, stuff started to shift in 2018, I had a moment of really sitting down with myself, like, looking myself in the mirror and going, like, "What do I really believe about this?" And, and now I talk about intuition all the time, and this was one of the first, like, real sparks for me of this internal, like, I call it divine knowing all the time. It's like I had this knowing of like, this really doesn't feel like my whole story. This feels like actually healing is possible. And I just didn't ever allow myself to look at that before or kind of even toy with the idea. Um, yeah, so I really kind of shifted my whole way I live my life in terms of I started putting self-care first. And self-care is a huge buzzword. So for me, it's more than, getting my hair and nails done sometimes, this is like, it's daily foundational healing methods that I use in my own life. So all the things you listed, the singing, being with animals, cats are my soul animal, and the journaling and yoga and meditation are all ways that I connect with my intuition. So yeah, these became like my intuitive healing methods, and I like gave them a name, and I talk about them all the time. And I was like, you know what, these are like non-negotiable parts of my schedule now. And so yeah, so I'm at a point now where connecting with my intuition and reconnecting with my body and experiencing pleasure, like all of these ways are just ways to reconnect to feeling good. All of these things led me to a place where um, it was like I started to realize, like, oh, I don't need caffeine anymore. I don't need energy supplements anymore. I can go for a hike if I want. I can talk to people all day long, like as an empath, which for some people it feels really hard. I just started to realize, like, oh, my body is really responding to all of this. So that brings us up to today and where we are now.
It's beautiful. I love what you said about something to the effect of being home in your body. And there are listeners right now that are thinking, my body is rejecting me. My body is not healthy. I'm sick. I'm tired. And so, if you could give a tip or something that you started with to those listeners that are like, I don't even know, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? How do I start loving my body more? You listed the things that you've done and things that you've incorporated into your self care routine. But is there something that maybe you personally started with, or like a low hanging fruit that somebody listening could try for themselves?
Yeah, I absolutely love that question because that was huge for me. Yeah, and I used to speak to my body the same way. I would say like my body hates me, and you're told too, like, if anyone listening is dealing with anything in the realm of chronic illness, you've probably had a doctor literally tell you your body's attacking itself. And I came to a point where I realized that didn't feel right to me. It's one. It's just the way that Western medicine sees it right now. And I'll never tell someone not to go see their doctor, but it feels like a very, very limited view of what's really happening. So, in terms of low hanging fruit, just looking at, like, is it possible that that's not the case? Is it possible that my body is actually providing for me in miraculous ways every single moment? Like the fact that you're a soul living in a physical body on planet Earth, like, to me, I was like, wow, like that. How did my soul come to this body? That's kind of amazing. And if your body is feeling like it's falling apart right now, is it possible that it's communicating something to you? Is it possible that, like, this is an SOS and it's in your best interest to start to build a relationship with it? Your body is not, it's kind of the vessel of your soul. And so it is a part of you. It's not separate from you. I think that's one of the things that I really struggled with going from doctor to doctor all the time, is I started to see my body as this entity other than me. And so it really felt like an adversary. And so when I started to just entertain the thought, like, oh, what if my body like unconditionally loves me? Like, what if it's providing for me in every moment and it's like assimilating my food in the ways that I need and all these little things that we're not even aware of. It's interesting to look at like all those little minute puzzle pieces that come together. Um, and so again, if your body's really struggling and you're really struggling with that, I totally understand the difficulty with seeing it that way. So you can start the relationship as well and saying, what are the parts of my body that have gone unacknowledged for a long time and um, really are kind of crying out for love in a way. If this, it's almost like thinking of like this is a person that you can build a relationship with. So it's not separate from you. And yeah, there are different ways to start to generate that love within yourself, and that starts to even heal you in itself.
Beautiful. Another part of your story that I really resonated with was your, I'll call it communing with God. And you started off being raised as an evangelical Christian. And it sounds to me like you have a profound relationship with God now, and maybe a different relationship than one that you were raised with. And as you're going through the healing of your body and the relationship with your body and affirming that your body is working with you, I'd love to hear how your relationship with God, the one you started with and the one you have now, has kind of played into that journey.
Yeah. So yeah, where I started was pretty different than where I am now. And it's interesting. I kind of joke sometimes that I like took the concept of God I was first given and I like threw a stick of dynamite in it. um, so yeah, it's really interesting. I started to realize at a certain point that it's like the God I was shown initially fit into a pretty precise box. Um, and I started to realize, like, huh, God really sounds like a person. Like, it's like we took these like personality things and said, well, God is like this, and God is a man, and God is this and that. And just kind of looking at the world around me, I started to realize that feels kind of limiting. Like I think part of it too is I was really raised to look at things in a very like black and white way. So it's either right or it's wrong. Like it's good or it's sinful. And that definitely like played into the self-loathing a bit, because I'm not perfect and I'm not going to be, and I'm also not designed to be. So um, in kind of re-understanding like who God is to me, I started to realize like actually I'm perfect as I am within my imperfections. And I just kind of started to give myself permission to be exactly who I am and not be afraid of who I am or judge who I am. Um, so yeah, initially I kind of had this idea of like, and a lot of people I think kind of pick this up in different ways, like God is this like scolding father figure, or like you can never measure up, you can never be good enough or make him happy. And I started where that shifted for me was starting to make the connection that like really we're not that separate from God. Where this is just how I see it. The and I talk about intuition too as like the divine knowing. So like if I have this connection within myself, then um it just felt like there was something there. Like, is God really this like unattainable, like I don't know, unimaginable thing, or is it this presence that I can have a relationship with every day? Um it's interesting, like within evangelical Christianity, they do kind of teach that, like you pray to God every day, and you can have a relationship with God, but the relationship always felt kind of strained to me. It always felt like a little bit performative, a little bit like I have to ask for um, things that I kind of feel bad for asking for. Um, and so now it kind of feels like I don't really have to ask for things all the time. I don't have to ask for my life to be different or for me to be different. I don't have to ask to like be saved from myself all the time because I'm fine as I am and I'm powerful as I am and I have divinity within me. And I don't know, it all just became this like more holistic view rather than really compartmentalized and um yeah, like it's either right or it's wrong. Like, well, what if right and wrong like just all kind of blend together? That's kind of how it became for me.
I appreciate that because sometimes we start off, as you said, believing one thing. And then over the years, we can change our perspective and we can see it a little bit differently. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. We've also talked, you and I, about books and things that we turn to as resources. As you've been sharing your story, I feel compelled to mention a couple of books that I have read over the years that may be helpful to listeners that are identifying with part of your story. One would be You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay and Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I know that you have read through A Course in Miracles, and you have some passages that you like. And oftentimes people will ask, what is A Course in Miracles? Maybe I've heard of it. I have no idea what you're talking about, Dallisa. Marianne Williamson kind of made it popular. And, she then, I think, with Oprah and talked about A Course in Miracles. And I know it's a hefty book. I own a copy, you own a copy. Can you talk to me about what have you gotten from that book, A Course in Miracles? And what I'd love for you to do is if you could open it and we're just going to pick a passage out and we're going to leave it up to that divine guidance to share something with the audience today.
Sure. So, yeah, it's interesting. It didn't even occur to me at first the connection between this book and Marianne Williamson because I actually discovered it through a bunch of people recommended it to me when um, I was kind of grappling with like my old religious beliefs and coming to a place where like I just don't feel like God is this like entity I've been told they are. And a lot of people told me, "Oh, pick up A Course in Miracles." Um, so to me, it is, yeah, it was a big part of me reframing who God is in this way that um, it's almost like all roads lead to the same place. So it's not necessarily, again, this is just my view, but it's not necessarily that like Christianity is the only way to get to enlightenment. And so it kind of just feels like it's kind of a practice in expanding your own awareness and expanding um, who you view yourself to be as a soul. Um, and so, yeah, and the other thing I love about it is, I mean, it's practically the size of a dictionary. But even if you, yeah, flip to a random page, like you'll find some really interesting nugget. And even the other thing I love is in the back section, if you get the combined volume, which is what I have, there are all these mini lessons, like daily practices you can walk through. Um, and yeah, it's just actually this one right here is really cool that I randomly found. Is, I am forever an effect of God, and so it's one paragraph, and it's just something to reflect on each day. So in this giant book, there's like so many different ways to just kind of re-see the world in a new way. So that is one of the things I really love about it, and it is kind of coming through as the voice of God. So it's you can kind of read it in that way. So it's almost like a different version of the Bible, which is really interesting.
I would agree. I know very little about it. You're inspiring me to pick up my copy again and start reading through it. And I love your story because I think it's going to give hope to people that maybe feel like they're living in old, outdated beliefs about themselves. And you're giving them inspiration to open their eyes maybe in a new and different way. And I appreciate you sharing your story, part of your life story, and giving all of us a bit of light today. So, Lorna, I thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Lorna works with clients who are ready to heal. For more information, visit lornastellintuitive.com. Stories like this one are important to tell. It reminds us that even during the darkest times, we can always find light. We can always choose faith over fear. For exclusive content, please join my Spark Plug members only community and apply to be a guest on this show. Find out more at spiritandspark.com.